Chapter 1. The Christmas I Thought I Was Safe. I thought Christmas was the one night nothing bad could happen. Not in my house, not with my family, not with my best friend sitting at my table. I'm Dana, and last Christmas I learned how betrayal doesn't scream. It whispers. It hides in a garage code changed to her birthday, in a smile across the dinner table, in messages that said Christmas night meant everything. I didn't catch them in bed. I didn't yell or explode. I stayed quiet. I wrote everything down, and I watched as the perfect lives they built using my name slowly collapsed. This is the story of the Christmas I thought I was safe, and how silence became the most powerful thing I ever used. I still remember the sound of the snow, not falling, but settling. That soft hush you only notice when the streetlights turn everything silver and your whole neighborhood seems to hold its breath. If you had asked me then, I would have told you I was safe. I would have said we were fine. I would have said Christmas had a way of stitching people back together, even the ones who had started to fray. It was a quiet suburb outside Columbus, the kind with matching mailboxes, trimmed hedges, and wreaths on every door. Our house was warm enough to fog the windows. Cinnamon and roasted garlic hung in the air. The tree in the living room leaned a little to the left because the stand was old, but I liked it that way. It felt real. It felt like ours. My name is Dana Whitaker. I was 46 that winter, old enough to know better, still young enough to believe in second chances. I worked as a senior project manager for a regional health systems consulting firm, the kind of job that lives in calendars and deadlines. I was good at it because I liked order. I liked checklists. I liked knowing what came next. My husband, Eric, was 51. He was a sales director for a medical device company, always on the phone, always chasing quotas, always carrying work home in his shoulders. We had been married for 17 years. We had 2 kids, both older now, both home for the holidays, but not little anymore. They moved through the house like guests who still remembered where everything was, grabbing cookies off the tray, sliding their phones into their back pockets, calling me Mom the way they always had, but with one eye already on the door. Eric had been short-tempered lately, not cruel, just sharp around the edges, like a man whose patience had been sanded down by travel and pressure and something he refused to name. He snapped at traffic, he sighed too loudly when the dishwasher beeped, he rubbed his forehead as if the world kept pressing there. But he still kissed my cheek when he walked past me, he still reached for my hand at the grocery store. That is the thing about marriages that start to break. They do not always announce themselves. Sometimes they whisper. And then there was Tessa. Tessa Monroe had been my best friend since college. 23 years of birthdays, breakups, bad haircuts, and long talks in parking lots. When my dad died, she sat beside me at the funeral home and held my hand until my fingers went numb. When her first marriage collapsed, she slept on my couch for 2 weeks, and I made her tea like it was my job to keep her upright. We were the kind of friends people pointed at and said, that is real friendship. That is sisterhood. Tessa had a spare key to my house, tucked on her key ring like she belonged here. She had for years. She used it when she arrived early to help with the party, when she let my dog out if I was stuck at work, when she stopped by to drop off something she thought I needed. I never questioned it. I never felt threatened by it. Tessa was not just welcome, she was woven in. That evening, she showed up with a pie in one hand and a bottle of sparkling cider in the other, cheeks pink from the cold. Her hair was curled in soft waves, her lipstick a shade brighter than usual. She hugged me tight and said, "I missed you," like we had not seen each other in weeks, even though she had come by 2 days earlier to help me wrap gifts. Eric stepped into the kitchen to take the cider from her, and she laughed in a light way that made the room feel easier. She touched his arm when she thanked him, a quick, casual tap, the kind that could mean nothing. It probably meant nothing. At the time, it did. "You need help?" she asked me, already tying an apron around her waist like she knew where everything was. I told her to slice the rolls and keep an eye on the oven. She did it like she had been born into my family. The kids drifted in and out, teasing each other, arguing about what movie we would watch later. The dining table was set with the good plates. Candles flickered in the center. Outside, the porch lights glowed. Inside, everything was golden. Eric poured drinks, not too much, just enough to soften the edges. He looked tired, but he smiled more than he had in weeks. I watched him laugh at something Tessa said and felt a small, warm relief in my chest. Maybe this was what we needed, a night that felt normal. At some point, I realized the garage door opened without the usual beep from the keypad. It was already up, cold air sneaking into the mudroom. I frowned, wiping my hands on a dish towel. "Did you leave the garage open?" I asked Eric. He looked up from the counter. "No," he said. "I changed the code this week. Security update. We've been getting those neighborhood alerts. Better safe." I blinked. "You changed it and didn't mention it?" He shrugged like it was nothing. "I've had a lot going on, Dana. It's the same system, just a different number." Tessa, standing at the sink, rinsing her hands, turned and smiled. "That's smart. You can never be too careful these days." I nodded, but the feeling in my stomach tightened just a little. Not fear, more like confusion. I knew the old code. I used it every day. Eric changing it without mentioning it felt like moving a familiar piece of furniture in the dark. Dinner went on, we ate, we clinked glasses, the kids talked about their plans, internships, friends, their lives that no longer centered on our house. Eric asked questions and nodded like he was listening, but his phone sat face down by his plate, and I noticed it more than I wanted to. After dessert, the living room turned into a cozy blur. Wrapping paper piled up, a Christmas playlist hummed low. Tessa sat on the floor with my daughter, helping her untangle a necklace, their heads bent close, laughing quietly. Eric leaned back on the couch, eyes half closed, finally looking like the world had stopped pulling at him. I went into the kitchen to start cleaning up. Tessa followed, drying dishes beside me. She bumped my shoulder with hers and said, "You did good. Look at them. Look at your life." I smiled, grateful, a little teary because I was tired and sentimental, and I wanted to believe her. A few minutes later, I realized I hadn't seen her in a while. I heard footsteps upstairs, soft, unhurried. Then a door opening and closing, our bedroom door. My hands paused in the sink. I told myself she was grabbing her coat. It was cold. She probably tossed it somewhere earlier. I kept rinsing plates. When she came back down, she had her coat draped over her arm, cheeks flushed again, like she had been moving quickly. She didn't look at me for a second, just reached for the dish towel and started wiping the counter. "You found it?" I asked, keeping my tone light. "Yes," she said. "Sorry, I went up without thinking. I left it on your bed earlier." "It's fine," I said, and I meant it. She had always been like that, comfortable, familiar, nothing to hide. Still, later, when the house quieted and the kids drifted to their rooms, I stood in the mudroom and stared at the garage keypad. I pressed a few numbers, just guessing, trying to make sense of it. The door didn't budge. Eric, already halfway upstairs, called down that he was exhausted. He said he had an early call. His voice sounded distant, like his mind was already somewhere else. I turned the keypad over in my head the way I do with any problem. Patterns, logic. What number would he choose? Then it hit me. Not like lightning, more like a slow sinking. The code wasn't random. It was a date. I walked upstairs, quiet, and opened my calendar app, the one I use for everything. I scrolled back to July, and there it was, Tessa's birthday. I had a reminder set because I never forgot it, July 19th. My chest tightened. I tried to laugh at myself, tried to say, of course he used her birthday. She was like family. She watched our house sometimes. She had a key. Maybe he picked it so she wouldn't get locked out if she came by while we were away. Maybe he did it because he was too tired to think of anything else, and that date was easy. I climbed into bed beside him. He rolled toward me, kissed my forehead, and mumbled good night. His hand found mine, warm, familiar. I lay there, listening to the distant hum of the heater, the soft creak of the house settling, the faint sound of someone flushing a toilet down the hall. I stared at the ceiling and let myself choose the version of the story that hurt less. I told myself Christmas makes people soft. I told myself trust is built on years, not on one strange detail. I told myself I was safe. That night, I went to sleep believing Christmas had saved us. Chapter 2. The Betrayal That Didn't Scream. 4 days after Christmas, the house felt like it was holding its breath all over again. The tree still stood in the corner, needles starting to drop onto the skirt, the lights still blinking on a timer like they had not gotten the memo that the holiday had passed. The kids were back to their lives, the kind that exists mostly on highways and group texts. The dishes were done, the leftovers were gone, and the silence that moved in afterward felt too clean, like a room after someone has been rushed out of it. Eric had already gone back to work, phone in hand, tie half straightened, that familiar, restless energy wrapped around him. He kissed my cheek near the door and said he would be late, quarter-end nonsense, and I nodded like I understood because I always did. I watched his car disappear and told myself I was overthinking again. I told myself that one strange detail about a garage code did not rewrite 17 years. By mid-afternoon, I was at the kitchen table with my laptop open, trying to catch up on emails, forcing myself into the ordinary. That was when Tessa texted to ask if she could swing by and drop off a container she had borrowed, and I typed back, "Sure, come whenever." My fingers hovered over the screen after I sent it, as if I was waiting for my own conscience to answer back. She arrived just before 3, hair pulled into a loose bun, cheeks red from the cold, carrying the container and a bag of oranges like she was doing me a favor. She stepped inside with the same ease she always had, coats already half off before the door clicked shut. "You look tired," she said, voice gentle in that way that used to comfort me. I smiled automatically. "I am fine, just work stuff. You know how it is." She walked into the kitchen like it belonged to her, set the container by the sink, then turned and leaned against the counter. "I thought we should plan something fun. New Year reset. Dinner, a movie, something." "That sounded nice," I said. I kept my tone smooth. I kept my eyes on the laptop as if the screen could hold me steady. She chatted for a few minutes about nothing important. A neighbor who got a new puppy, a sale at a home goods store, her sister being dramatic again. I nodded at the right spots. I laughed once. It was all so normal that it almost felt like a test. Then her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her smile tightened just slightly, not enough for most people to notice, but I noticed. She pocketed it too quickly. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she said, "just a work thing. I need to run. I promised I would help someone with a presentation. You know me." I did know her. That was the problem. She hugged me on her way out, her arms warm and familiar, her perfume the same clean floral scent I had smelled for decades. She said, "Call me later," and I said, "I will." The door closed behind her, and the house returned to its quiet. I went back to my laptop, tried to answer a few emails, tried to pretend my chest was not tight. 10 minutes passed, maybe 15. I stood up to refill my tea and saw it on the kitchen island, her iPad, face down, case a pale gray. She must have set it there without thinking. My first thought was simple. I should text her so she does not panic. My second thought came right behind it, small and sharp. Her birthday, the garage code. I felt my pulse shift. I picked up the iPad with one hand, lighter than it should have felt, and turned it over. The screen woke instantly. No passcode prompt, no Face ID request. A message banner was sitting there, a preview line glowing at the top. I froze. The name on the banner was Eric. My fingers went numb. I did not tap yet. I told myself to set it down. I told myself this was private. I told myself I did not want to be the kind of woman who snoops. Then another banner slid in, also from Eric, and this time I read the preview without meaning to. Still thinking about Christmas night. I can still feel you. I stood there like the floor had dropped a fraction of an inch. I could hear the refrigerator humming. I could hear the clock ticking. My own breath sounded too loud. I tapped the banner, not because I wanted to, but because my body moved on its own, like instinct. The messages opened. There was no explicit photo, no dirty language, nothing that would make it easy to dismiss as a joke. It was worse than that. It was soft. It was intimate. It was the kind of closeness that belongs to two people who have built their own private world. I should not have stayed that long, Eric wrote. You looked beautiful. I should have said something sooner. Tessa replied, We said we would not rush. We said we would be careful. Christmas was a mistake and also not a mistake. I don't know how to explain that. Eric answered, We were close, closer than we've ever been. I keep replaying it. I keep thinking about how you looked at me. Tessa wrote, Not rushing yet, please. I cannot be the reason your whole life collapses. Just be patient with me. I read the words and felt my throat close. There was no explicit photo, no dirty language, nothing that would make it easy to dismiss as a joke. It was worse than that. It was soft. It was intimate. It was the kind of closeness that belongs to two people who have built their own private world. I should not have stayed that long, Eric wrote. You looked beautiful. I should have said something sooner. Tessa replied, We said we would not rush. We said we would be careful. Christmas was a mistake and also not a mistake. I don't know how to explain that. Eric answered, We were close, closer than we've ever been. I keep replaying it. I keep thinking about how you looked at me. Tessa wrote, Not rushing yet, please. I cannot be the reason your whole life collapses. Just be patient with me. I read the words and felt my throat close. There was no explicit photo, no dirty language, nothing that would make it easy to dismiss as a joke. It was worse than that. It was soft. It was intimate. It was the kind of closeness that belongs to two people who have built their own private world. I should not have stayed that long, Eric wrote. You looked beautiful. I should have said something sooner. Tessa replied, We said we would not rush. We said we would be careful. Christmas was a mistake and also not a mistake. I don't know how to explain that. Eric answered, We were close, closer than we've ever been. I keep replaying it. I keep thinking about how you looked at me. Tessa wrote, Not rushing yet, please. I cannot be the reason your whole life collapses. Just be patient with me. I read the words and felt my throat close. There was no explicit photo, no dirty language, nothing that would make it easy to dismiss as a joke. It was worse than that. It was soft. It was intimate. It was the kind of closeness that belongs to two people who have built their own private world. I should not have stayed that long, Eric wrote. You looked beautiful. I should have said something sooner. Tessa replied, We said we would not rush. We said we would be careful. Christmas was a mistake and also not a mistake. I don't know how to explain that. Eric answered, We were close, closer than we've ever been. I keep replaying it. I keep thinking about how you looked at me. Tessa wrote, Not rushing yet, please. I cannot be the reason your whole life collapses. Just be patient with me. I read the words and felt my throat close. There was no explicit photo, no dirty language, nothing that would make it easy to dismiss as a joke. It was worse than that. It was soft. It was intimate. It was the kind of closeness that belongs to two people who have built their own private world. I should not have stayed that long, Eric wrote. You looked beautiful. I should have said something sooner. Tessa replied, We said we would not rush. We said we would be careful. Christmas was a mistake and also not a mistake. I don't know how to explain that. Eric answered, We were close, closer than we've ever been. I keep replaying it. I keep thinking about how you looked at me. Tessa wrote, "Not rushing yet, please. I cannot be the reason your whole life collapses. Just be patient with me." I read the words and felt my throat close. There was no explicit photo, no dirty language, nothing that would make it easy to dismiss as a joke. It was worse than that. It was soft. It was intimate. It was the kind of closeness that belongs to two people who have built their own private world. "I should not have stayed that long," Eric wrote. "You looked beautiful. I should have said something sooner." Tessa replied, "We said we would not rush. We said we would be careful. Christmas was a mistake, and also not a mistake. I don't know how to explain that." Eric answered, "We were close, closer than we've ever been. I keep replaying it. I keep thinking about how you looked at me." Tessa wrote, "Not rushing yet, please. I cannot be the reason your whole life collapses. Just be patient with me." I read the words and felt my throat close. There was no explicit photo, no dirty language, nothing that would make it easy to dismiss as a joke. It was worse than that. It was soft. It was intimate. It was the kind of closeness that belongs to two people who have built their own private world. "I should not have stayed that long," Eric wrote. "You looked beautiful. I should have said something sooner." Tessa replied, "We said we would not rush. We said we would be careful. Christmas was a mistake, and also not a mistake. I don't know how to explain that." Eric answered, "We were close, closer than we have ever been. I keep replaying it. I keep thinking about how you looked at me." Tessa wrote, "Not rushing yet, please. I cannot be the reason your whole life collapses. Just be patient with me." I read the words and felt my throat close. There was no exclamation point, no dramatic confession, just two people making plans in the quiet spaces, like this had been happening long enough to develop rules. My hands were so cold I thought I might drop the iPad. I set it down gently on the island like it was made of glass. I sat in a chair, stared straight ahead, and waited for tears to come. They did not. My body went still instead, like it had turned to stone from the inside out. I stood back up, slow, and scrolled higher. There were messages from before Christmas, from early December, then November. It was not a one-time slip. It was a thread, continuous and careful. A small sound left me, not a sob, not a gasp, just air escaping through teeth. I scrolled again and a different app icon caught my eye. A calendar. It was open in the background, like she had been using it. I should have closed it. I should have stopped. I did not. I tapped. A weekly view popped up. Multiple entries were color-coded. I stared until my eyes found the pattern. Every month, sometimes twice, an entry that repeated with the same bland title. Year-end review dinner. The location field made my stomach twist. It was not downtown. It was not near Eric's office. It was a restaurant across town in a quiet part of the city, the kind you drive to on purpose, the kind with dim lighting and valet parking. I tapped one entry and saw notes underneath. Table for two, ask for booth, no last names. I felt something electric crawl up my spine. There were more. Year-end review dinner in September, August, July. Sometimes it switched to client check-in. Same restaurant, same time. Always late, always after work hours. It had been going on for months, maybe longer. My vision narrowed. I knew that restaurant. I had driven past it a dozen times. Eric once told me he took a client there and did not like the parking. I remembered that because I teased him about being picky. I remembered him laughing. I swallowed hard. My mouth tasted metallic. I sat there and forced myself to breathe through my nose. In, out, slow. Like a person trying not to panic on an airplane. My hands were still cold, but my thoughts were suddenly sharp, lined up like dominoes. Eric's new phone last spring. He told me his old one was acting up. He said the battery was swelling. I believed him because it sounded reasonable. The way he started taking calls outside on the deck. The way he began sleeping with his phone under his pillow like a teenager. The way Tessa offered to help him plan my birthday dinner, insisted she would handle reservations, told me not to worry my pretty little head. My stomach turned. And then the other memory surfaced, one I had shoved into a drawer in my mind because it felt too boring to matter. In early fall, Eric came home with a folder and told me I needed my signature on something for work. An NDA, he said, client holiday project, nothing major. He was distracted, pacing while he talked, answering emails with one hand. I had signed without reading the fine print because I trusted him, because I trusted us, because that is what you do when you have built a life with someone. I could see the paper now in my mind, my signature looping at the bottom. I remembered asking, "Do you need me to print my name too?" And him saying, "No, just sign. It is a formality." Formality. I stood and walked to the pantry, not because I needed anything, but because I needed to move. I pressed my palm against the shelf, felt the cool wood under my skin, and tried to make sense of what my body was doing. I was not shaking, I was not crying, I was not screaming. I was simply here, in my own kitchen while my life turned quietly inside out. I heard my phone buzz on the table. I did not pick it up at first. Then I did. A text from Eric. "How's your day? I might grab dinner with a client. Don't wait up." My eyes blurred for a second, not from tears, but from the absurdity of it. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard. I could have written back, I know. I could have detonated everything right then. I could have called Tessa and demanded she explain herself. I could have called Eric and told him to come home and look me in the face. Instead, I set the phone down. I went back to the iPad. I took a screenshot of the messages, then another, then the calendar entries. I opened the Notes app on my own phone and started typing dates, times, little details, all the ordinary things that suddenly mattered. I did not cry, I did not pray, I did not call anyone. I stayed quiet and I started building my timeline. Chapter 3. They thought I would break. It was clarity. It was the kind that does not arrive like a scream, but like a door clicking shut behind you. I woke the next morning and the world looked the same. The tree still lit on its timer, the last of the wrapping paper still tucked into a bag by the pantry, my coffee maker still blinking the wrong time. But I did not feel the same inside it. I felt like someone had taken a marker and circled every moment I had ever ignored. Eric came downstairs already dressed, tie loose, coffee in his travel mug. He moved around me like nothing had shifted. "You okay?" he asked, as if he was being thoughtful. "I'm fine," I said, and my voice sounded normal, which surprised me. He nodded, eyes scanning his phone. He was leaving for work, and I watched him like a stranger who happened to know the layout of my kitchen. At the door, he paused and looked back. His expression softened for half a second, a practiced warmth. "I'll be late again," he said. "Quarter end, don't wait up." "Okay," I said. He leaned in and kissed my cheek. It was quick, familiar, and somehow it made my skin feel wrong, like I was wearing a sweater turned inside out. The door closed, his car backed out, the sound of it disappeared down the street. I stood in the quiet and told myself I would do one thing. I would ask a question, just one, the way you test a floorboard before you step on it. Not an accusation, not a trap, a question. That night, when he finally came home, it was close to 9. He smelled faintly of peppermint gum and cold air. He put his keys on the counter and sighed like he wanted credit for surviving the day. "Long day," he said. "I figured," I said. "Can we talk for a second?" His shoulders tightened. Not much, just enough for me to see it. "About what?" he asked, already moving toward the fridge. "About the garage code," I said gently. "I noticed it was changed and I realized it was Tessa's birthday. I just want to understand why." He laughed once, short and sharp. "Are you serious right now?" he said. "Dana, it was a code. I picked something I could remember. She comes by sometimes. It's practical." "I didn't know you changed it," I said. "That's all." It felt strange to find out after the fact. He shut the fridge door harder than necessary. "You're overthinking," he said. "You've been doing that a lot lately." I watched him, tried to keep my breathing steady. "I'm not trying to fight," I said. "I'm asking because it made me uncomfortable." His eyes flicked up, annoyed, like I had interrupted him during something more important. "You're burnt out," he said. "That's what this is. You've been stressed for months and now you're making a thing out of nothing. It's Christmas week, Dana. Can we not?" The way he said Christmas week, like I was the one poisoning it, made my stomach drop. I nodded slowly, not because I agreed, but because I could feel the conversation closing like a fist. "Okay," I said. "I won't push." He relaxed, the tension draining from his shoulders as if he had won something. "Thank you," he said. "I'm exhausted. I don't have the energy for this." He walked past me, heading upstairs, and I stood there in the kitchen listening to the quiet space he left behind. I had expected denial. What I had not expected was how quickly he made me feel ridiculous for asking. It was almost impressive, the speed of it, the ease. The next day, Tessa called me. Her voice was airy at first, like she had rehearsed being casual. "Hey," she said, "do you have a minute?" "Sure," I said. There was a small pause, like she was searching for the right tone. "I feel like something's off," she said. "You were kind of quiet yesterday." My throat tightened. She was fishing. She was setting the stage. "I've been tired," I said. "That's all." She exhaled a sound that tried to be sympathetic. "Dana," she said softly, "if I did something, I'm sorry. I would never want to hurt you." My hands went cold again. The same cold from the kitchen island, the same cold from reading those messages. I leaned against the counter to steady myself. "What do you mean?" I asked. She started to cry, or at least she sounded like she did, a small tremble in her voice, a break that could have been real if I had not already seen what I had seen. "I don't know," she said. "I just feel like you're reading things wrong, like you're seeing patterns that aren't there. You've been through so much with work and the kids leaving and Eric traveling. I get it. It's a lot. But please don't turn me into the villain in your head." It was so smooth I almost admired it. She wasn't denying anything directly. She was just offering me a mirror and asking me to doubt my own reflection. "I'm not turning you into anything," I said, keeping my voice even. "What things?" she pressed. "Just life," I said. She sobbed a little harder, the kind of cry that makes people rush to comfort you. "I love you. You know that, right? You're my person. If you think something is wrong, it's because you're scared, not because something is actually happening." I closed my eyes. For a moment, I could see the old version of us, college dorm rooms and cheap wine, and promises that we would never betray each other. Then the images shattered into the screen of her iPad and the sentence that had changed everything. "Okay," I said. "I hear you." "Good," she whispered, "because I can't handle drama right now. I'm trying so hard to keep my life together." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so perfectly backwards. She had taken my pain and handed it back to me as if it were my flaw. After that, the world started shifting in small ways that would have been invisible to anyone who was not watching. People I used to hear from weekly stopped texting. A friend from our couples group took longer to respond, then stopped responding at all. A neighbor who always waved at me from her driveway looked down at her phone when I walked past. Then came the brunch. Tessa invited me on Saturday, cheerful voice, light tone. "Come over," she said. "Just something easy. Bagels, coffee, nothing big. I miss you." I went because I needed to see the shape of the lie in daylight. I went because part of me still wanted to believe there was some explanation that would let me keep my life intact. I went because I told myself that truth does not hide well when there are other people in the room. Her house was immaculate, holiday decor still up, candles lit, the smell of vanilla in the air. When I walked in, Eric was already there, sitting on her couch like it was normal, laughing with two couples we knew from the neighborhood. He looked up and smiled at me, wide and easy, like he was greeting his wife at a party he hadn't planned. "Hey," he said, "you made it." I felt the room tilt, not because he was there, but because he was comfortable. Tessa hugged me tight, her face pressed near my ear. "I'm so glad you came," she whispered. We sat around her dining room table with bagels and fruit and coffee. The conversation was bright and shallow, work stories, kid stories, complaints about weather. And then, like a dancer hitting her mark, Tessa steered it. "I've been worried about Dana," she said, smiling in a sad little way that made everyone lean in. "You know how it gets when the kids grow up, and she carries everything." My cheeks burned. "I'm okay," I said. Eric's hand came to my shoulder for a second, a public gesture of support. "She's been pushing herself," he said. "I keep telling her to slow down." Tessa nodded, eyes shining. "And sometimes when we're stressed, we start imagining things," she said gently. "We read into every little detail. We assume people are against us. It's so human." One of the women at the table murmured, "Oh, honey," like I was fragile. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from humiliation. Tessa wasn't confronting me, she was diagnosing me. She was telling a story about me while I sat there, and everyone was swallowing it like it was kindness. I forced a small smile. "I'm not imagining things," I said. Eric's face tightened, a warning. "Dana," he said under his breath. Tessa reached across the table and touched my hand, soft, maternal. "See," she said, still smiling. "That's what I mean. You get defensive. You don't have to fight. We're here." It was a trap, dressed as support. I felt my throat close. I wanted to stand up and say, "I saw your messages. I saw your calendar. I saw your lies." Instead, I sat there, because I could feel how quickly they would turn it into proof that I was unstable. When I got home later, my daughter called. She had come by the week before, helped me bring decorations down from the attic. She heard about the brunch, of course she did. These things travel fast in small circles. "Mom," she said, and her voice already sounded tired. "Why are people saying you're upset at Aunt Tessa?" I swallowed. "I'm not upset. I'm just dealing with something." "Can you not do this right now?" she snapped. "It's Christmas. You're making Christmas ugly." The words hit me like a hand to the chest, not because she meant to be cruel, but because she had swallowed the same story. She believed the version of me they served up, the anxious mom, the burnt-out woman, the one who ruins the mood. "I'm sorry," I said, quietly. She softened a little. "I just want peace," she said. "I don't want drama." After the call, I sat on the edge of my bed and stared at the wall until my eyes hurt. The loneliness wasn't loud. It was total. It was being surrounded by people and still feeling like the only one in the room who knew what was real. 2 days later, the financial piece surfaced. Not as a dramatic discovery, but as an email that landed in my inbox like it belonged there. I was copying myself on a work thread when I noticed an unfamiliar subject line farther down. Client Engagement Update, Q4 Deliverables. My name was on it, in the CC line, along with Eric's work email and Tessa's new business email, the one she used for her so-called consulting side hustle. Attached was a draft proposal. In the body of the email, a sender I did not recognize wrote, "Glad to have Dana Whitaker's expertise supporting this engagement." My pulse slowed. It always slowed when something became concrete. I clicked through the chain. There were references to a holiday project. There was my signature, scanned, at the bottom of a document labeled Confidentiality Agreement. The same NDA Eric had asked me to sign months ago. Except now my name was being used like a stamp, like credibility, like leverage. I sat there, staring at the screen, and I finally understood the shape of it. This was not just betrayal in a bedroom or a restaurant booth. This was exploitation. It was using my reputation, my career, my careful professional image to grease the wheels of something they were building together. That afternoon, I made an appointment with an attorney, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a calm voice. Her office smelled like paper and coffee. I sat across from her and placed my notes on the desk, the screenshots, the calendar entries, the email chain. She looked at me and said, "You have to stop trying to win the argument. You need to protect yourself." "I don't want to blow up my life," I said, and my voice cracked for the first time. She nodded, not unkind. "It's already been blown up," she said. "You just haven't let the sound reach the outside yet. You keep this clean. You keep it factual. You document. You do not confront unless we plan it, and you do not let them paint you as unstable." I left her office with a folder in my hand and a strange kind of calm in my chest. Not peace, not relief, something steadier. Back in my car, I sat with my hands on the steering wheel and watched people walk past the courthouse steps, carrying their own problems, their own secrets, their own quiet wars. I thought about how easily Eric had called me burnt out, how smoothly Tessa had cried into the phone and asked me not to make her the villain, how quickly our friends had accepted that I was the problem because it was simpler than believing the truth. I started the engine and drove home, and with every mile, something in me settled. I was not going to beg to be believed. I was not going to plead for a place at a table where I was only invited to be managed. That was the moment I stopped asking to be chosen. Chapter 4. Revenge without raising my voice. Enough to stop begging. Enough to start moving. The next week became a quiet routine of appointments and documents, the kind of work I understood better than grief. I met with Marissa Hale again, the attorney with steady hands and a voice that never rose. She slid a yellow legal pad toward me and asked me to start at the beginning. Not the emotional beginning, the factual one. Dates, emails, signatures, accounts, where my name appeared, where it should not have. I told her what I had seen on the iPad, what I found in my inbox, the NDA Eric pushed in front of me months ago like it was nothing. Marissa listened without flinching, then looked me in the eye. "We're going to do this clean," she said. "Clean how?" I asked. "Quiet. Documented. No public accusations, no social media, no confrontations that turn into he said, she said," she said. "We notify the right parties. We protect you. We let the process do what it does." It was the first time in weeks that someone spoke to me like I was sane. After her office, I met a forensic accountant named Troy Kaplan in a small suite over a credit union. He was in his 60s, glasses perched low, desk stacked with folders like he had been waiting his whole life for other people's messes. "Show me the accounts," he said. I opened my banking app, then handed him printed statements Marissa told me to pull. Joint checking, savings, the credit card Eric used for travel, the account I had kept mostly for household bills. Troy traced lines with his pen, circled a few charges, and tapped the page gently. "This restaurant," he said. "These are consistent. Same day of week, same time window, same spending pattern." My stomach tightened. Even numbers could tell a love story, and this one was ugly. "What about this?" I asked, pointing to transfers that looked small enough to miss. Troy nodded. "These look like they were meant to look ordinary. A few hundred here, a few hundred there, but they stack. Do you know where they went?" "I didn't," I said. "Not until the email." He wrote something down, then leaned back. "Most people come in here wanting revenge," he said. "You seem like you want proof." "I want my name out of their hands," I said. "I want to stop being used." He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded once. "That's the right instinct," he said. At home, I did not slam doors or throw dishes. I did not stalk around the house searching for more secrets. I moved like a woman reorganizing a closet. I created folders on my laptop, screenshots, emails, statements, calendar entries. I made a timeline in a spreadsheet, not because I loved spreadsheets, but because they kept me from collapsing into feelings I could not fix. Eric watched me from a distance, suspicious of my calm. One night, he leaned in the doorway of my office and tried to sound casual. "You've been quiet," he said. "Are you still upset?" "I'm not upset. I'm busy." "Busy with what?" he asked. I kept my eyes on the screen. "Work. Life." He crossed his arms, irritation flashing. "This is getting ridiculous. You're turning everything into a courtroom." I turned to face him. I made my voice gentle on purpose. "I'm turning everything into facts, because facts don't change based on your mood." His jaw tightened. He had no reply that would not reveal him. He walked away, and I heard him mutter something under his breath that sounded like crazy but softer, like he wanted to believe it and also feared it. Marissa drafted a formal notice on my behalf. It did not sound angry, it sounded professional. It stated that my name and signature had been used in connection with a consulting engagement without my informed consent. It demanded immediate removal of my name from all materials. It requested an independent audit of documents referencing my credentials. It warned that any further misuse would be considered unauthorized and potentially fraudulent. When I read it, my hands trembled for the first time since this started, not from fear, but from how final it felt. "Send it," I said. Marissa nodded. "We'll send it to the client's legal department and to the contact who looped you in. We'll also send it to Tessa's business entity address." I swallowed. "And Eric?" "We can notify his employer's compliance office about a potential conflict of interest. We don't accuse, we report. There's a difference." I heard myself whisper, "Do it." 2 days later, the dominoes started falling, not with a crash, but with a series of small clicks, like a lock turning. Eric came home early on Wednesday, face pale, tie crooked, anger leaking out of him like heat. "What did you do?" he snapped the moment he stepped inside. I was at the kitchen sink, rinsing a mug. I turned off the water slowly. "I protected myself." "No," he said, stepping closer. His voice rose. "My company called me in, compliance. They asked me questions. They put me on leave. Do you understand what you've done?" I kept my voice low. "I understand what you did, and what you let happen in my name." He stared at me like he couldn't decide whether to charm me or threaten me. "This was never about you. It was just a side project, a favor. You're making it something it isn't. A favor that used my signature. A favor that looped my credentials into someone else's contract." He slammed his keys on the counter. "You're trying to ruin me." I shook my head once. "I'm refusing to be ruined quietly." That night, I did not sleep much. I lay in bed listening to Eric move around downstairs, phone calls muffled, cabinets opening and closing, pacing. I thought about how easily he said it was never about me, as if my name belonged to him, as if my reputation was a household tool he could borrow. The next morning, my phone rang. Tessa. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. I let it ring. The third time, I answered, not because I wanted to talk, but because I was done letting her control the tempo. "What?" I said. Her voice came out shaky, stripped of her brunch softness. "Please, don't hang up. Dana, I'm begging you." I stayed silent. "I got an email from a client," she said. "They're pulling out. They're asking questions. They're asking for documents. This is a misunderstanding. We can fix it." "A misunderstanding," I repeated, tasting the word. She inhaled sharply. "I never meant for your name to be used like that. Eric said you knew. He said you signed off." My chest went tight, a clean, hot anger that felt unfamiliar because it was so deserved. "He said I knew," I said. "He said I knew," she whispered. I swear I thought you were okay with it." I let the silence stretch until she filled it with her own panic. "I'm coming over," she said. "Please, I need to see you. I need to explain." "You don't, but do what you want," I said. She arrived an hour later. I watched her car pull up through the window. Her hands shook as she got out. She did not look like the woman who hosted brunch with candles and effortless sympathy. She looked like someone who had been caught in a lie and couldn't find a clean exit.
When I opened the door, she stepped in fast, eyes shiny, already crying. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you." I moved aside to let her in, not as a welcome, but as a formality. She stood in my entryway, twisting her fingers together. "This has gotten out of control," she said. "I'm losing everything. People are canceling meetings. The client won't answer me. This is my livelihood." I stared at her, the woman who had held my hand at my father's funeral, now asking me to save her. "You used my livelihood," I said quietly. She flinched. "I didn't mean to. Eric told me it was fine. He said you were supportive. He said you trusted him. He said you didn't want to be involved directly, just on paper." On paper, like my name was a stamp. She took a step closer, voice dropping. "I made a mistake. We made a mistake. But you don't have to destroy me. Please, you're my best friend." I felt something settle in my bones, a calm so cold it almost felt like mercy. "You keep saying best friend like it's a shield. It's not." Her tears fell faster. "Tell me what you want," she said. "Money, I'll pay you back. A statement, I'll tell them it was my fault. Just tell me." I looked at her and thought about all the times I had softened to make other people comfortable, all the times I had swallowed my instincts to keep peace. I didn't want her blood. I wanted my life. "I want you to stop," I said. "I want my name removed from everything. I want you to communicate through attorneys, and I want you to never step into my house again." She stared at me like she couldn't recognize me. "You're really doing this?" she whispered. "I'm really doing this." She searched my face for anger she could use against me, for a raised voice she could point at later. I gave her none. My voice stayed even. "You'll be okay," I said, "and I meant it in the way you mean it to someone who chose their cliff." She made a sound like she wanted to argue, then seemed to realize there was nothing to argue with. She wiped my face with the sleeve of her coat and nodded, small and defeated. When she left, the air in the house felt cleaner, not happier, just clearer. That afternoon, Eric got the email that made everything real. He stood at the counter reading it, shoulders slumped, the color draining from his face. I could see the words reflected faintly in his glasses, even though I could not read them myself. He looked up at me for the first time in months. His expression held something honest, fear. "They terminated me," he said, voice flat. "Effective immediately." I didn't move. I did not celebrate. I did not gloat. "I'm sorry you made choices that led here," I said. He stared at me like he wanted to hate me, like he wanted to blame me, but something in him understood the math. He walked away first, and then...
That night, I slept in the guest room. Not as a punishment, not as a dramatic statement, but because my body could not rest beside him anymore. The next week, Marissa filed what needed to be filed. Eric stopped trying to argue and started trying to bargain. I listened when it mattered and stayed silent when it did not. On a gray morning in late January, I stood in the foyer with a set of keys in my hand, the house quiet behind me. The old Christmas wreath was still in the garage, forgotten on a hook, brittle now, its red bow faded. I took one last look at the staircase, the framed family photos, the corners where I had tried so hard to keep everything together. Then I stepped outside, pulled the door shut, and heard the lock click into place. Chapter 5. The Christmas I got myself back. But because I stopped holding it together. The first Christmas after everything ended arrived without announcement. No rush, no list, no crowd. Just a thin layer of snow on the sidewalk outside my apartment and a string of white lights I had hung myself along the window because I wanted to, not because anyone expected it. I was 47 by then. I lived alone in a small place on the edge of town, close enough to the courthouse that I sometimes heard footsteps early in the morning, people carrying their own stories inside. My furniture was mismatched, half new, half rescued from the house I left behind. The walls were bare except for one framed photo of my kids when they were younger, their smiles crooked and real. That morning, I woke up early, not from anxiety, not from habit, but because the light through the blinds looked soft and inviting. I made coffee and stood by the window, watching the street wake up slowly. No shouting, no slammed doors, no feeling like I was bracing for impact. My daughter arrived just after 10. She knocked first, then laughed when I teased her through the door. "I know it's you," I said. "I recognize that knock." She stepped inside, stamping snow off her boots, carrying a paper bag from a bakery near her place. Her hair was shorter now. She looked older, steadier. When she hugged me, she held on longer than she used to. "Merry Christmas, Mom," she said. "Merry Christmas," I said back. We did not do a big meal. We did not perform the holiday the way we used to. We made pancakes. We listened to music low enough to talk over. We sat at my small table and let the quiet be part of it. At one point, she looked around my apartment, taking it in, the simple setup, the lack of clutter. "You okay here?" she asked. I nodded. "I am." She studied my face like she was looking for something fragile. "You seem different," she said. "Not sad, just lighter." "I am lighter," I said. "It took a while, but I got here." She smiled, then looked down at her plate. "I'm sorry," she said suddenly, "for what I said last year." I knew what she meant. I had replayed that phone call enough times to recognize the sound of regret when it finally showed up. "You were trying to protect the peace," I said. "So was I. We just didn't know what that actually meant yet." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. We did not need to say more. After she left that afternoon, the apartment felt quiet again, but not empty. I cleaned up slowly, not because I had to, but because I liked the rhythm of it. Outside, the sky shifted from pale gray to pink, then settled into blue. Later that evening, my phone buzzed with a message from an old neighbor. We had not talked much since everything happened, but we had always been friendly. "Did you hear about Tessa?" I stared at the screen for a moment before answering. "No, what happened?" She replied a minute later. "She sold the house, moved out of state. Florida, I think. Things fell apart pretty fast for her." I read the message twice, then set the phone down. I did not feel relief. I did not feel triumph. I did not even feel sadness the way I thought I might. What I felt was space. The kind that opens up when something heavy finally moves out of the way. I remembered the woman who once slept on my couch and cried into my shoulder. I remembered the brunch table and the practiced concern. I remembered the way she said "best friend," like it was a title she could cash in. I did not wish her harm. I also did not wish her back. That night, I lit a candle and sat on the floor with my back against the couch, letting the warmth fill the room. I thought about Eric, too, about the job he lost, the marriage that ended not with shouting, but with paperwork and long silences. I thought about how easily people talk about betrayal like it belongs only to villains. The truth is messier than that. People make choices. Some are small, some are careful, some are selfish, dressed up as survival. Not everyone who betrays you is evil, but every choice has weight, and eventually, gravity does its work. I had spent months thinking revenge meant making someone else feel what I felt. I imagined raised voices, public reckonings, moments where the truth landed like a punch. That is not what happened. What happened was quieter. I put my name back where it belonged. I sent facts where facts were needed. I stepped out of rooms that required me to shrink. I stopped explaining myself to people who were invested in misunderstanding me. That was the revenge, not destruction, but refusal. Later, as the night deepened, I wrapped myself in a blanket and watched the lights outside flicker on and off as neighbors returned home. Somewhere a radio played faintly through a window. Somewhere a family laughed too loud. I did not miss my old life. I missed the woman I used to be before I learned how easily trust can be borrowed and spent by other people. But I did not want her back. She did not know how to protect herself. I did. Before I went to bed, I opened my laptop and reread the notes I had written months earlier, the timeline that felt like armor. I didn't need it anymore. I closed the file and deleted it, not out of denial, but because it had done its job. I brushed my teeth,
turned off the lights, and stood for a moment in the quiet, listening to my own breathing. There was no knot in my chest, no second guessing, just a steady sense of being exactly where I was supposed to be. If you are listening to this and something in it feels familiar, if you have ever been the calm one while the story was rewritten around you, if you have ever been told you were too sensitive when you were actually paying attention, know this: silence can be strength. Preparation can be kindness to yourself. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop holding everyone else together. If you have lived through a betrayal that never screamed, one that unfolded in quiet rooms and polite conversations, you are not alone. You do not owe the world your anger. You owe yourself your dignity. And if you want to share your story in your own time and your own way, I'm listening. That Christmas, I did not get my old life back. I got myself